The reply. Pamela Takanashi first saw Maria Brown in a photograph, which was why she misunderstood her. It was not an official photograph. Official photographs, Pamela had learned, were kinder to institutions than to people. They flattened grief, corrected the lighting, softened the accident of age, made everyone appear equally available for classification. This photograph had none of that modesty. It had been taken at some conference, perhaps in London, perhaps in Boston, in one of those hotel rooms designed to erase geography by means of gray carpet and intelligent lighting. Maria Brown stood beside a lectern with a cup of coffee in her hand, her dark hair cut sharply around her face, her expression not happy exactly, but amused, as though the world had made a poor argument and she was waiting for it to finish. Pamela enlarged the image on her second monitor. Behind Maria was a slide with the title, AI Litigation and the Architecture of State Error. Pamela leaned back in her chair and let out a sound which was not quite laughter. There were many types of plaintiffs, and she had learned to recognize them, not as a matter of contempt, but as a matter of professional economy. There were the wounded, who wrote everything in capital letters and attached photographs of injuries that had nothing to do with the claim. There were the procedural men, usually retired, who had discovered the federal rules of civil procedure late in life and loved them with a frightening purity. There were the conspiratorial, whose filings had footnotes greeting inside footnotes. There were the lonely, who sued the government because the government, unlike their children, was required to answer. Maria Brown appeared to be none of these. She was nearly 50, though the photograph had the polished defiance of a woman who had stopped asking age for permission. She had a law degree, a small practice, several articles on administrative accountability, and a public life composed with irritating care. Books, lectures, interviews, essays on artificial intelligence and litigation strategy, photographs from airports, photographs from gardens, photographs with people Pamela did not recognize but who looked like the sort of people who recognized one another. This was not, Pamela thought, a broken woman. This was a woman with a project. The complaint itself had arrived in the usual electronic way, without drama, without weight, without the moral inconvenience of paper. The docket notification had appeared at 7:43 on a Tuesday morning, while Pamela was still drinking bad coffee from the cafeteria downstairs. By 9:10, the complaint was open on her screen, and by 9:47, she had already formed her first private defense to it, the defense that never appears in pleadings because it belongs to the more primitive and more reliable law of human disbelief. This cannot have happened as she says. The caption read, Maria Brown v. United States Department of Defense, Brigadier General Victor Sanchez in his official capacity, and unknown federal officials. The causes of action had been arranged with a discipline Pamela found annoying before she found it impressive. Fifth Amendment due process, equal protection principles applicable to federal action, deprivation of liberty interest without meaningful notice or review, unlawful conversion of national origin, foreign association, and private relationship into adverse state suspicion, declaratory and injunctive relief, correction and identification of the administrative pathway. Pamela read the phrase again, the administrative pathway. She disliked it immediately. It had the smoothness of something invented by a person who wished to make uncertainty sound respectable. It was not a term of art, not properly. It was one of those phrases plaintiffs used when they did not know what had happened, but wanted the court to believe that not knowing was itself a constitutional injury. And yet the complaint was not emotional. That was the odd thing. The factual allegations were terrible, if true. Maria Brown, born in the Soviet Union and brought to America by her parents as a young child in the early 1990s, had lived in the United States for decades. Her parents were dead. Her legal life, financial life, friendships, home, and citizenship all belonged to the country whose government she now accused of turning biography into danger. She had entered a relationship with Colonel Lawrence King, known to everyone as Larry, a senior Army officer with a reputation for competence, stubbornness, and the sort of quiet personal loyalty that institutions praise until they are required to tolerate it. Then Brigadier General Victor Sanchez appeared in the complaint like a pressure system moving across a map. There had been questions, informal conversations, remarks about foreign influence, vulnerability, Russian background, unsuitable relationships, reputational risk. A note had allegedly entered a personnel or security-facing system, though nobody had yet admitted the note existed. Larry King's access changed overnight, then his assignments, then his evaluations, then the temperature of rooms when he entered them, before the room's doors shut for sure. The complaint did not say that Sanchez killed him. It was too careful for that. It said that Colonel King died by suicide after his career was administratively destroyed through a sequence of actions no official had been willing to identify as a decision. Pamela stopped there, not because she was moved, but because she disliked the drafting. It did not overclaim. That made it harder to answer. The complaints then moved through Maria's correspondence with the government: requests, complaints, appeals, clarifications, inspector general routes, civil rights routes, privacy routes, command routes, congressional inquiries that had been acknowledged and then dissolved into process. Few received responses. Most did not. Many were rejected as outside scope. Some were redirected to offices that later denied ownership. All answered questions Maria had not asked. All stated that no adverse determination had been made, while carefully avoiding the question of whether an adverse operational effect had been created. Pamela had spent 14 years inside federal legal work, and she knew that passive voice was not always evasion. Sometimes it was exhaustion. Sometimes it was institutional politeness. Sometimes it was the only honest grammar available when too many hands had touched a file. Yet here, the passive voice accumulated like dust on a locked windowsill. It did not prove concealment, but it showed where light had not been allowed to fall. She requested the files. By noon, she had sent 6 emails to 3 components, copied 2 lawyers at the Department of Justice, and marked 1 request as urgent, though she knew urgency was a color institutions used mainly to decorate delay. By 4, she had received the first response, a summary. By the following morning, she had received 2 more, another summary and a memorandum describing categories of records without attaching them. The documents had a polished, airless quality, as if someone had washed them before bringing them into the house. No discriminatory animus was identified. No formal adverse action was taken against Miss Brown. No record reflects a determination that Miss Brown constituted a security threat to the United States of America. No official finding connected Colonel King's personnel issues to Miss Brown's national origin. Pamela printed the 4 pages and placed them side by side on her desk. They were excellent sentences. She admired them in spite of herself. Each was technically narrow, perfectly groomed, and almost useless. They denied formalities. They did not answer consequences. At 6:20 p.m., she emailed Maria Brown requesting consent to an extension of time. She expected resistance, or a speech, or one of those long pro se replies in which consent becomes a moral theater. She phrased the request with care. First extension, additional time needed to consult relevant agency components, review allegations, obtain records, determine appropriate response. The consent arrived 2 minutes later. Agreed. Nothing more. No accusation, no lecture, no attempt to extract a concession. Just the single word, followed by Maria Brown's electronic signature block, which was itself exact and unadorned. Pamela stared at it for longer than the word required. "That was fast," said Daniel Reyes from the doorway. Pamela looked up. Daniel was DOJ, technically the outside litigator, though everyone understood that the Department of Defense supplied the organs and Justice supplied the suit. "She's pro se," Pamela said. Daniel came in, leaned against the filing cabinet, and glanced at the printouts on her desk. Pro se lawyers are the worst kind. She's not that kind. There's more than one kind? Pamela did not answer. She was looking